Alpha King forbids the Omega from the Relic well, yet the well rises to greet her as its keeper. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. In the heart of the forest, nestled between ancient trees and forgotten secrets, there stood a well, the Relic Well, a place whispered about in hushed tones among the elders, believed to hold power from a time long past. It had been untouched for centuries, its waters dark and still, holding secrets of the old world. But none dared approach it. Not until Emily Gray. Emily, an Omega, was no stranger to rejection. Her pack had cast her aside long ago, deeming her weak and unworthy. Her scent, unlike others, had never fully developed, leaving her scentless, invisible to the very wolves who were supposed to be her kin. She had spent her life in the shadows, never quite fitting in, always lingering on the edges of a world that demanded strength. The Alpha King, Alexander Thornridge, ruled over the packs with an iron fist. His eyes, cold and calculating, had seen Emily before, seen her as nothing more than a burden, a weak Omega with no place in his kingdom. He had always kept his distance, knowing the power of his bloodline, knowing the dangers of the Relic Well. You must never go near it, he had warned her, his voice a low growl as they stood near the well's entrance. That well holds powers you cannot comprehend. It is cursed, and it will destroy you. But Emily, despite her years of being overlooked, felt something deep within her stir. It was more than curiosity. It was a call, something ancient, something tied to her very being. She could feel the well calling to her, its waters whispering secrets only she could hear. Every night, she dreamed of it, the well rising, the power within it awakening. She couldn't explain it, but she knew she had to. Go. One fateful evening, when the moon hung low and the air was thick with mist, Emily ventured to the well. The path was treacherous, and every step she took was filled with doubt. She could hear the voices of her pack, the warnings of Alexander echoing in her mind. But the pull of the well was stronger. As she approached, something changed in the air. The winds shifted, and the waters of the Relic Well began to stir. It was as if the well itself recognized her, as if it had been waiting for her all along. When Emily knelt beside it, she felt the coolness of the stone beneath her fingertips, the pulse of energy that radiated from the depths of the well. The power surged through her, filling her with warmth and strength she had never known. You are its keeper, a voice whispered, one that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She turned, expecting to see someone, but there was no one. Only the Alpha King's warning echoed in her mind. But it was too late. The well had chosen her, and there was no turning back. As the moonlight bathed her in its glow, Emily understood. The well had risen to greet her, and she was its keeper. The power was hers to wield now. Emily stood tall, her heart racing, her mind whirling with the implications of her newfound role. She was no longer the weak Omega the pack had cast aside. She was something more, something the world had yet to understand. The Relic Well had chosen her, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Emily awoke to the soft hum of the forest around her, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. She had spent the night by the well, sitting in quiet contemplation, the weight of her newfound role settling over her like a heavy cloak. The Relic Well had chosen her, but she still didn't fully understand what that meant. The whispers that echoed in her mind had been so clear, so certain, but there was still so much she didn't know. She rose to her feet, feeling a sense of power flowing through her veins like a river suddenly unbound. It was a power she had never felt before, warm, pulsating, alive. Her heart raced as she looked out over the forest, wondering what her next step should be. The world around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to make a move. She had always been the outcast, the one nobody wanted, the one who was cast aside as weak and useless. But now, she was different. The Relic Well had seen something in her, something that made her worthy. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, the sound of footsteps approached from behind. She turned, expecting to see one of the elders or perhaps a member of her pack, but instead, it was Alexander Thornridge, the Alpha King himself. His tall, imposing figure emerged from the shadows, his piercing silver eyes locking onto hers. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her with that same cold, calculating gaze that had always made her feel small. But there was something different in his eyes now, something unreadable. "You went to the well," he said, his voice low and steady, the words carrying an unexpected weight. Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known this moment would come, the moment when Alexander would find out what she had done. "I had to," she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to remain calm. "The well called to me. It chose me." Alexander's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening as he took a step closer. The air between them crackled with tension, and for a moment, Emily wondered if he would try to stop her, if he would insist that she leave the well behind. But instead, he simply watched her, his expression unreadable. "You should not have done it," he said quietly. "The well is dangerous. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Emily met his gaze, her heart beating faster as she stood her ground. "I know what I'm dealing with," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I can feel it, Alexander. The power. It's not just the well, it's me. I'm the keeper." There was a long silence as the words hung in the air between them. Alexander's expression softened just a fraction, and for the first time, Emily saw something other than coldness in his eyes. Perhaps it was concern, or maybe something deeper. "The keeper," he repeated, his voice low. "I didn't want this for you, Emily. You're an Omega. You don't have the strength to handle it." Emily's breath caught in her throat at his words. "You don't know what I'm capable of," she replied, her voice firm. "I'm not weak. I've never been weak." The Alpha King didn't respond immediately. He looked at her for a long moment, his gaze intense, as if he were trying to read something in her that even she didn't understand. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly as if the weight of the world had settled on them. "Maybe not," he murmured. "But I still don't understand how this could have happened." Emily felt a surge of frustration rise within her. "Maybe you don't need to understand. Maybe you just need to trust me." Alexander seemed taken aback by her words. He had always seen her as nothing more than a fragile Omega, a creature to be protected, to be kept in the shadows. But here she was, standing before him, stronger than he had ever imagined. His eyes softened, just slightly, but it was enough to make Emily's heart skip a beat. "Trust you," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. For a brief moment, Emily wondered if this was the beginning of something new, something that would change everything. But the moment was fleeting, and before she could speak again, Alexander turned and began walking away, his footsteps echoing in the quiet forest. "Be careful," he called over his shoulder, his voice low. "The well is only the beginning, Emily. You have no idea what you've unleashed." And with that, he was gone, leaving Emily standing alone, staring after him, her heart a storm of emotions. She knew he was right, this was only the beginning. The well had chosen her, but she had no idea what that meant for her future, or what dangers lay ahead. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them. The power was hers now, and she would not let anyone take it from her. Emily spent the next few days in a state of restless contemplation, the weight of her encounter with Alexander heavy on her mind. The power she had felt from the Relic well continued to hum within her, as though it was a living, breathing part of her now. It wasn't just the magic that flowed through her, it was the connection to the well, an unspoken bond that had become a part of who she was. Yet, the uncertainty remained. What was expected of her now? What did it mean to be the keeper of the well? The questions swirled in her mind, but no answers came. Alexander's warning echoed, but it was not enough to keep her from the well. Every night, she found herself walking the path toward it, drawn by its silent pull, as if it was calling to her. On the fourth night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Emily made up her mind. She couldn't ignore the pull any longer. With steady steps, she made her way to the Relic well, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The forest around her was still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. She reached the clearing where the well stood, its stone walls glowing faintly in the moonlight, the surface of the water still and serene. She knelt beside it, her fingers brushing the edge of the stone, and immediately, the energy within her surged. The well responded to her touch, the water rippling gently, a soft whisper filling the air. "You are the keeper," the voice returned, clearer now, as though the well itself had a voice. Emily's heart raced as she looked into the water, seeing nothing but her reflection at first. Then, as if the well was showing her something hidden beneath the surface, images began to form, visions of ancient battles, of powerful beings, of a time long forgotten. She gasped as the images flickered, her breath catching in her throat. This was her destiny. She wasn't just the keeper of the well, she was connected to the very power of the world, a power that had been lost and hidden for centuries. The realization struck her like a wave, and for the first time, she understood the weight of the responsibility she carried. The well had chosen her for a reason. As she sat there, trying to process the flood of emotions and images, the sound of footsteps broke through the stillness of the night. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she turned, expecting to see Alexander or one of the elders from her pack. But this time, it was different. The figure that approached was familiar, yet unfamiliar at the same time. Alexander stood at the edge of the clearing, his silver eyes fixed on her with a mixture of disbelief and awe. He had followed her. Of course he had. He had been watching her, perhaps even waiting for her to make this move. "You're here," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander said nothing at first, his eyes scanning her face as though trying to understand what had changed. His expression was a mixture of confusion and admiration, though his usual coldness remained. You came back," he finally said, his voice low, but with an edge of something softer. Emily stood up slowly, facing him fully now. "I had to," she replied. "I don't know what this means yet, but I have to understand it. I have to know what's expected of me." Alexander's gaze softened slightly, though he still seemed unsure. "I warned you," he said, his voice tinged with something like regret. "The well is not just a place of power. It's a force that can change everything. You don't know what you're dealing with." Emily took a step closer, her heart steady despite the weight of his words. "I don't need to know everything right now," she said firmly. "But I know this much: I'm not the weak Omega you thought I was. And I'm not going to back down now." For a moment, there was silence between them, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Then, without warning, Alexander stepped forward, his presence overwhelming as always. He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from hers. His gaze locked onto hers, his voice low and full of emotion. "You're right," he murmured. "You're not weak. I see that now. But that doesn't change the danger. You've opened something, Emily. Something that can't be closed." Emily met his gaze, her heart beating steadily in her chest. "I don't fear what I've awakened," she said softly. "I'm ready for whatever comes." The words hung between them, and for a moment, it felt like everything shifted. Alexander's hand slowly lowered, his fingers brushing hers, a silent acknowledgement that she was no longer the fragile Omega he had once believed her to be. The well had chosen her, and now, it seemed, Alexander was beginning to see her for who she truly was. The keeper of the Relic well. And maybe, just maybe, something more. The days following Emily's meeting with Alexander were filled with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had stood face to face with the Alpha King, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. Not as the weak Omega, the one dismissed by her pack, but as someone with purpose, someone with power. The Relic well had chosen her as its keeper, and she could feel the weight of that choice settling within her, a force she had yet to fully comprehend. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the forest in a soft golden light, Emily found herself drawn once again to the well. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. She stood before the well, the ancient stone calling to her like a silent promise. The power she had felt before was still there, thrumming beneath her skin, and this time, she knew it was time to embrace it. As she knelt by the well, her fingers brushing the cool stone, the familiar whisper filled her mind. "You are the keeper," it said, the voice calm yet powerful. Emily closed her eyes, her heart pounding as the energy surged within her. The world seemed to shift, and for a moment, she was no longer in the clearing. Instead, she stood in the heart of a vast, ancient forest, the trees towering above her like silent guardians. The air was heavy with magic, the kind of magic that had been lost to time. In the distance, a figure approached, a shadow in the fading light. Emily's breath caught as she recognized the form. It was Alexander, but he was different. His expression was no longer cold, no longer distant. His eyes, the silver pools that had always seemed so unreadable, were now filled with something else. Something warmer. He reached out to her, his hand extended as if to guide her through the forest. "Come," he said softly, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her very bones. "You must understand." Emily hesitated for only a moment before taking his hand. As their fingers touched, the connection between them flared to life, and she was flooded with a vision of ancient battles, of power, of a kingdom lost to time. She saw herself standing at the center of it all, a force of nature, the keeper of the relic well, and a key to the balance of the world. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Emily breathless and wide-eyed. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alexander's expression softened, and for a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. "That was what you are now," he said quietly. "The keeper. You have awakened something, Emily. Something that has been dormant for centuries." Emily stared at him, her mind reeling. She had always known there was something special about the well, but she had never imagined it could be so powerful, so ancient. "What does it mean?" she asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. Alexander's grip on her hand tightened slightly, and he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "It means the world is changing," he said, his voice low and serious. "The well is only the beginning. There are forces at play that we cannot yet understand. But one thing is clear, you are at the center of it. You will have to choose, Emily. The power you now possess, the role you must play, it will not be easy. There will be sacrifices, and you will have to face challenges unlike anything you've ever known." Emily looked into his eyes, seeing the depth of his words reflected in them. He wasn't just speaking of power, he was speaking of destiny. Her destiny. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "I will not back down. I will embrace what I've been chosen for." Alexander studied her for a long moment, and Emily could see the flicker of something in his eyes. It was admiration, yes, but also something else, something she couldn't quite place. "You are stronger than you know," he murmured. "But remember, Emily, strength alone will not guide you. You will need allies. You will need to trust others, even when it feels impossible." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of excitement and fear. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she felt prepared to face it. The well had chosen her as its keeper, and now, it was time for her to step into the role that awaited her. The forest around them seemed to shift as if acknowledging her decision, the air thick with the magic that flowed through the earth. "The journey begins now," she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath. She wasn't alone anymore. The well, the magic, and even Alexander, everything was coming together. And whatever came next, she would face it with courage, for she was no longer the Omega who had been cast aside. She was the keeper of the relic well, and her destiny was just beginning. Emily had never felt the weight of her choices more than in the days that followed her meeting with Alexander. The world around her seemed to pulse with the magic of the well, and she could feel it in her very bones. Every step she took, every breath she inhaled, was intertwined with the power of the relic she had now become the keeper of. But with that power came a responsibility she had not fully understood. She had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. The voice of the well still echoed in her mind, guiding her, yet the path ahead remained unclear. She had been warned, by Alexander, by the elders, but there was still so much she did not know. The world, she realized, was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. She had always lived on the outskirts, always been an outsider. But now, she was at the center of something ancient, something powerful. And she had no idea what dangers awaited her. Late one afternoon, as the sun began to set and the forest around her turned golden with the fading light, Emily made her way toward the clearing where the relic well stood. The air felt heavier tonight, the magic pulsing more strongly than before. She couldn't explain why, but she knew something was different. Something was changing. As she reached the well, she stopped, her gaze drawn to the water's surface, which shimmered with an almost otherworldly glow. The well was calling to her again, and this time, she could feel its urgency. She knelt by the edge, her fingers grazing the cool stone. The familiar voice echoed in her mind, but this time, it was stronger, clearer. "You are the keeper," it whispered, "and your time has come." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She didn't understand what that meant, but she felt the truth of it deep within her. The well had chosen her for a reason, and she could no longer ignore its power. She closed her eyes, letting the energy flow through her, feeling it wrap around her like a cloak. For the first time, she felt truly connected to the world, to the magic, to everything that had come before her. But then, just as quickly as the moment had arrived, it was gone. The magic seemed to fade, leaving her with a sense of longing, of something unfinished. She opened her eyes, only to find that she was no longer alone. Standing before her was Alexander, his tall form silhouetted against the fading light. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You've come again," he said quietly, his voice steady, but there was something in it, something that spoke of concern, of fear. Emily didn't speak immediately. Instead, she studied him, her heart still pounding. "I had to," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to understand this. I need to know what the well wants from me." Alexander stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low. "This is not just about power. This is about balance, Emily. The well has chosen you, yes. But with that choice comes a burden." Emily stood slowly, her eyes locked on his. "What kind of burden?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Alexander seemed to hesitate, as if choosing his words carefully. "The well is a force of nature. It was meant to be sealed away, hidden from the world. But now it's been awakened, and you're the one who must keep it in check." His eyes softened, and for a moment, Emily saw something vulnerable in him. "But there are others who would seek its power, and they won't stop until they have it." The weight of his words settled heavily on her shoulders. She had always known there was more at play than just the well's magic. She had felt it from the moment she first touched its stone. But now, with Alexander's warning, the full weight of the situation was becoming clear. She wasn't just the keeper of the well, she was the protector of something far greater. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the fear that stirred within her. Alexander looked at her for a long moment before speaking again. "Now, we prepare," he said. "There are things you need to learn, things you need to understand before you can truly control what the well has awakened. And I'll help you." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She had never asked for this role, never sought the power of the well. But it was hers now, and she would do whatever it took to protect it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alexander and Emily stood together in silence, the weight of the world pressing down on them both. The well had chosen her, but it was only the beginning. The real journey, Emily knew, was just beginning. Emily stood at the edge of the clearing, the weight of Alexander's words still pressing heavily on her. The night air was cool, the silence of the forest broken only by the soft rustle of leaves. Her mind raced as she tried to process everything that had happened, everything she had learned. The well, the power she now wielded, the responsibility it brought with it, it was all so much to bear. Yet, despite the uncertainty that clouded her thoughts, one thing was clear, she was not alone in this. Alexander had promised to help her, to guide her. And for the first time since her encounter with the well, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. But that hope was tempered by the realization that there were forces at work beyond her understanding, forces that sought the very power she had come to possess. The well was not just an ancient relic, it was a key, a source of immense power that could alter the balance of everything. As Emily turned to look at the Alpha King, standing silently by her side, she knew that the road ahead would be difficult. Where do we begin? She asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Alexander turned to face her, his gaze intense, yet somehow softer than before. We start with the basics, he said. The power of the well is not something you can control overnight. It will take time, patience, and understanding. But most importantly, you need to learn about the history of the well and its connection to the world. Emily nodded, her determination rising within her. She had always felt like an outsider, like someone who didn't belong. But now, she was part of something much larger. Something that had been waiting for her. The thought filled her with both fear and excitement. What do I need to know? She asked, eager to learn, to understand her place in all of this. Alexander looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. The well was created long ago by an ancient order of mages, he began. Its purpose was to protect the balance of the world, to ensure that magic remained in harmony with nature. But over time, its power became too great, too dangerous. The order sealed it away, hiding it from the world, until it was forgotten. Emily's brow furrowed. But why did it choose me? Why now? Alexander's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding passing through them. The well didn't choose you randomly. It chose you because you are connected to it. You may not understand it yet, but you are part of the legacy of the order. Your bloodline, your essence, it's what binds you to the well. Emily took a step forward, the weight of his words sinking in. So, I'm not just the keeper of the well, I'm part of its legacy? Alexander nodded slowly. Yes. And that legacy comes with both power and responsibility. You must learn to control the well's power, but also protect it from those who would use it for their own gain. Emily felt a surge of determination. She could feel the power within her, the magic that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. But she knew one thing for certain, she would not let anyone take what was hers. What do we do now? She asked, her voice firm. Now, we train, Alexander said. You need to understand the magic that flows through you, how to harness it. I will help you, but you must be willing to learn, to grow. The forest around them seemed to come alive as he spoke, the air humming with energy, as if the very earth was acknowledging their conversation. Emily felt the pull of the magic, the call of the well. She was ready. She had to be. The road ahead would be difficult, but with Alexander's guidance, she knew she could learn to control the power that had been awakened within her. She could feel it deep within her, this was her destiny. The well had chosen her, and now she would prove that she was worthy of its power. As she stood there, her heart steady and her mind focused, Emily knew that her journey was just beginning. There were dangers ahead, yes, but she would face them head-on. The keeper of the well was no longer the weak Omega she had once been. She was something more, something powerful. And nothing would stand in her way. Emily had spent the past few days under Alexander's careful guidance, her training in the ways of the well intensifying with each passing hour. The power inside her was no longer a foreign thing, but something that she had learned to channel, even if just a little. She could feel the magic growing stronger, the energy of the well pulsing beneath her skin as if it had always been a part of her. Every time she reached out to it, the connection felt deeper, more rooted. Yet with the power came a growing sense of urgency. There was something in the air, something shifting, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Alexander, ever watchful, seemed to notice the unease creeping into her heart. You're not fully ready, he said one evening as they sat by the fire, his gaze never leaving the flames. The well's power is like a storm. You can feel its pull, but you haven't yet learned how to navigate it. Emily nodded, her mind still buzzing with everything she had learned, everything she had yet to learn. How do I learn? She asked, her voice steady, though she felt the weight of the question pressing on her. Alexander glanced at her, his silver eyes reflecting the firelight. By trusting yourself, he replied. The well has chosen you for a reason. But you must let go of your fears, Emily. You must embrace who you are, not who you were. The words struck a chord within her. She had spent so much of her life feeling like an outsider, like a mistake. Her entire existence had been defined by what she lacked, by what others saw in her. But now, with the well's power coursing through her, she could feel herself changing. Maybe it was time to stop seeing herself as weak. Maybe it was time to stop doubting who she could become. The next morning, Emily stood at the edge of the forest, the relic well behind her, its energy still swirling within her. Today would be different. Today, she would face the power head-on. She had been avoiding the deeper magic of the well, afraid of what might happen if she lost control. But Alexander's words echoed in her mind. It was time to embrace the storm. As she approached the well, she took a deep breath, steadying herself. The air around her grew heavy, charged with the familiar magic of the well. She reached out, her hand hovering just above the surface of the water. And then, she let go. The moment her fingers touched the water, the world around her seemed to explode. Energy surged through her, more powerful than anything she had felt before. The magic twisted around her like a whirlwind, pushing and pulling, testing her limits. But instead of fighting it, Emily let herself go with it. She let the magic fill her, embrace her, guide her. She could see visions, ancient symbols flashing before her eyes. She saw herself standing in the heart of the well's power, a force of nature, unstoppable and unafraid. It was a vision of herself she had never allowed herself to see. And in that moment, she knew that she was ready. The storm inside her settled, and she stood there, breathless but grounded, the power of the well coursing through her with newfound purpose. As the energy faded, Alexander appeared at the edge of the clearing, his eyes filled with quiet awe. "You've done it," he said, his voice low and filled with admiration. Emily turned to him, her heart still racing, but her confidence unwavering. "I've only just begun," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "But I'm ready." Alexander studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because there's more to come. The well's power is not just a gift. It's a responsibility. And there are those who will do anything to take it from you." Emily's smile faded as the gravity of his words settled in. She had known this wasn't going to be easy. But now, more than ever, she understood the weight of what she had chosen. She was the keeper of the well, and with that title came not just power, but danger. But Emily was no longer the fragile Omega who had been cast aside. She was stronger now, and she would protect the well with everything she had. She would face whatever came next, and she would do it on her terms. The well had chosen her. And she would prove that she was worthy of its power. Emily woke up to a quiet, calm morning, the sunlight filtering through the trees in soft rays, casting long shadows across the forest floor. It was peaceful, almost serene, but the weight of her responsibility still hung heavily over her. She had learned to control the magic of the well, to feel its power as a part of herself. But Alexander's words echoed in her mind, "There are those who will do anything to take it from you." The warning was a constant reminder that her newfound strength came with a target on her back. The well, the relic, was more than just a source of power, it was a prize, coveted by forces far beyond her control. She had to be prepared for what was coming next, even though she had no idea what that would look like. She stood up slowly, the quiet of the morning making her feel more grounded, more connected to the world around her. The sounds of birds chirping in the distance, the rustle of leaves in the wind, were a comfort. But there was something else, something deeper, that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't before. The magic of the well, once foreign and strange, was now a part of her, and she knew it would shape her future. As she walked toward the clearing where the well stood, her thoughts drifted to Alexander. He had been distant since their last conversation, but she understood. The weight of leadership, of responsibility, was something only he truly understood. He had watched over his people for so long, but now there was a shift. She was no longer the helpless Omega in need of protection. She was something else. Something more. The clearing came into view, the well standing tall and proud at the center, its stone gleaming in the sunlight. The magic of the place seemed to hum with energy, as if it were aware of her presence. She walked toward it, her heart steady, her mind focused. As her fingers brushed the stone, she felt the familiar surge of power pulse through her, filling her with warmth, with purpose. The voice that had spoken to her before echoed again, but this time, it was clearer. You are ready, Keeper. Emily closed her eyes, taking in the feeling, the connection. The well was part of her, and she was part of it. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she was ready to face them. The well had chosen her, and with it, she had unlocked something within herself, a strength she never knew she had. It was time to embrace it fully. Emily. The voice came from behind her, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see Alexander standing at the edge of the clearing, his expression serious but with a hint of something softer in his eyes. You've come far, he said, his voice low. But there's still more to learn. Emily nodded, stepping away from the well. She didn't need to ask what he meant. She could feel it, the lingering sense of danger, the uncertainty in the air. There was still so much she didn't know, and she would have to learn quickly. What do we do next? She asked, her voice steady. Alexander's gaze met hers, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something between them. He didn't answer immediately, as if weighing his words carefully. You've proven yourself, Emily, he said finally. But the well is only the beginning. There are forces at play here that you aren't prepared for. Emily's heart quickened, but she stood her ground. Then teach me. I'll learn what I need to. I'm ready. Alexander stepped forward, his expression unreadable. It's not about learning, not just that. It's about survival. You will need more than just power to protect the well. You will need allies, and you will need to trust those who have their own agendas. Emily felt a chill run through her. She had known this, of course. The well's power would attract others, those who would stop at nothing to control it. But trusting others had never been her strong suit. She had always relied on herself, on her own strength. Who can I trust? She asked softly. Alexander's gaze softened, but there was no hesitation in his answer. You'll know who. And when the time comes, you'll have to decide where your loyalties lie. Emily took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling in. This wasn't just about magic or power, it was about survival, about making choices that could change everything. She wasn't just a keeper now. She was part of something much larger, and with that came a responsibility she couldn't ignore. I'll do whatever it takes, she said firmly. Alexander nodded, his expression still serious. Then let's begin. The words were simple, but they held weight. There was no turning back now. Emily was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant stepping into a world of danger and uncertainty. She was no longer just an Omega. She was the keeper of the well, and nothing would take that from her. Emily could feel the air shift the moment Alexander spoke. He had always been a presence, dominant, calculated, but now there was something different about him. He wasn't just the Alpha King, the ruler of the packs. He was something more, something vulnerable, and Emily could sense that he understood the weight of the burden she carried. The clearing around them, once so full of energy and power, now felt still, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Emily glanced at him, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. You've proven yourself, Emily. But the real test is ahead, he said, his voice low but clear. You've unlocked something within yourself, but there's more to this than just power. There's a world out there that will seek to control you, to take what you've just discovered. Emily nodded, her thoughts racing. She had always known that this day would come, the day when the power of the well would attract others, some with darker intentions. She had to be ready. How do I prepare? She asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension in her chest. Alexander took a step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. Trust in what you've become, but also in those around you. Not everyone will want to control you, Emily. Some will want to help you. You'll need to find them, and you'll need to trust your instincts. Emily's breath caught as she processed his words. Trust was not something that had come easily to her. She had always been alone, had always relied on her own strength to survive. But now, things were different. She had the power of the well within her, but she also had allies who were beginning to form around her, people she hadn't even fully recognized yet. I understand, she said quietly, her voice gaining strength. But I need more than just power. I need to know what comes next. Alexander gave her a long, measuring look before speaking again. The well's magic is tied to the balance of the world. It's ancient, and its power has been sealed away for a reason. It was meant to protect the world, but it can also destroy it if it falls into the wrong hands. And there are many who would try to take it from you. Emily's heart tightened at the weight of his words. She had known that the well's power was dangerous, but hearing it from Alexander made the truth even clearer. What do I need to do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's eyes softened, and for a moment, he looked almost human. You need to protect the well, but you also need to protect yourself. You are more than just its keeper, Emily. You are the key to its power. But there's something else, the curse that has followed it for centuries. It's not just the power you have to worry about. It's the consequences of what happens when that power is unleashed. Emily felt a chill run down her spine at his words. The well's power was not just a gift, it was a curse, something that could change everything. I'm ready, she said, her voice strong now. I'll do whatever it takes. Alexander looked at her, his expression unreadable, before finally nodding. Then we move forward. We find those who can help you. We find the allies who will stand with you. The forest around them seemed to stir as if answering his command, the wind picking up in a sudden rush. Emily felt a surge of energy, the well's power responding to her determination. It was as if the very world was in motion, acknowledging her readiness. You're not alone, Emily, Alexander said, his voice softer now. I'll be here to guide you, to protect you. But you have to remember one thing, you cannot do this alone. The road ahead will be difficult. You will face challenges, but you will also find strength in those around you. Trust them. Emily nodded, her heart steady, her resolve firm. She had spent so long doubting herself, but now, with Alexander's words echoing in her mind, she felt something shift within. Horror. She wasn't just the keeper of the well. She was part of something bigger, something that could change the world. And no matter what came next, she would face it with everything she had. I'm ready, she whispered, the words more to herself than to Alexander. Then let's begin, he said quietly, his voice full of purpose. And in that moment, Emily knew that her journey was far from over. It was only just beginning.